Today we're gonna have a quick step-by-step look on how do you reset the password on one of these APC power distribution units. If you do not know the password, you're gonna need a somewhat specialized serial cable. If you don't own one of these special cables from APC, you can watch my previous video where we actually made this cable. Then you're gonna need some sharp tip. Here I'm just using a paper clip which I bend so that we can push it here inside the reset hole to push the button. And of course you're gonna also need some sort of serial terminal program to actually connect to the serial port. If your unit have been powered off, then first of all plug in the power input cable, this one right here, and then wait until the unit fully boots up, which can be seen here via this green LED, which is, if it's lit, then the unit should be fully booted. Now, if this power distribution unit is actually in production actively, then do not worry about it, because the reset procedure of the password is actually not affecting the state of the ports themselves. So as you see, as an example, the port number 8 and the port number 7 are being powered on by the configuration which is on the PDU, and these should not be switched off, or others should not be switched on during the password reset procedure. So it means that this should, technically speaking, not mess up any of the production hardware. After the unit have been fully booted up, take then your specialized serial cable and plug in the RJ12 connector into the serial port, which is the lower port in this case. So this upper port here with the two LEDs is the network port. This is not the one which you're gonna use. This is the serial port right here. And by the way, you do need a serial connection to reset the password. You cannot do it through the network connection because of the safety procedures which are built into the switch. So they are forcing you to use a out-of-band management in order to prevent, bad guys just resetting your ports. After you plug in this RJ12 cable to the serial port, now you should plug in the DB9 serial connection cable into the serial port of your PC. If you do not have a serial port on your PC, then you should use a USB to serial converter. For example, this is here a USB to serial converter cable. So here is the electronics inside the connector which is doing the conversion between the USB signal and the serial signal. And please take care that in the case of the USB to serial, you do have to install the driver for this converter cable itself, and you have to make sure that the driver is installed and working properly. In the case of the serial to USB cable, then you just plug in the USB and to a USB port on your PC, and then you will just plug the male end on the converter cable into the female DB9 connector right here. And then I now assume that you do have everything working regarding the serial port. Next, then go to the personal computer in which you have plugged in the serial port coming from the APC power distribution unit. And then at this stage, I'm fully aware that now there are practically two main options. Namely, some people are gonna use then Linux, what you see here as an example, as the underlying operating system in order to connect to the serial console of the APC PDU. Or other people are gonna use Windows. And this is why in this tutorial I'm gonna actually present both operating systems. I must say in advance that using Linux for this purpose it's actually a lot easier, and that is because the support for serial port and serial terminal programs is in general a lot better. First I'm gonna cover the reset procedure using Linux, which, as I said, it is definitely easier. And even if you are a very novice user of Linux, don't worry. I'm gonna walk through step by step, no problem. Most probably you're gonna get successful. And then, yeah, let's go. And after I'm finished with the Linux tutorial part, then I will gonna switch over to doing the same thing on Windows XP as well. Here I'm using Linux Debian. Nevertheless, this tutorial should work on most Linux distributions. So the thing is that, first of all, you should get root access to the machine, because most Linux distributions do not give you full access to the serial port, especially on a hardware level, and that is of course because of the security reasons. So it's a good idea, even though I mean some of the things might work as a normal user, still it's better that you should do the commands and perform the operations as the root user. So at least on Debian you can just transform into the root user with the sudo command. If your user is added to the sudoers, which is by default done, it's gonna ask you for the sudo password, which is actually your average normal user password. After you type that in, as you see, the shell now have changed, and in your case most probably not gonna be red. I mean, I played around with my system that it warns me, so to say, that now I'm in a root shell, which you can clearly see here. Then we should at least figure out whether the serial to USB cable what we have just plugged in is being supported by the kernel, and that is rather easy to figure out. You just gonna have to look at the device messages, so DMESG, and it's a good idea to pipe it into less as an example. Now just push the enter key. There are lots of messages. Don't worry about it, just go to the very end, because most probably that's where the driver for your cable was loaded. As you see here are the messages that there is a new USB device being found. And yeah, it's a USB 2 device, it's a USB serial port, and it is using the CH341 driver, which is a good thing to know. And furthermore, notice this message that now this serial to USB port is actually attached to the TTY, which stands for teletype, and USB is obviously USB, and 0 is just a device name because this is the first device. Practically here this line then tells us that the driver have been loaded successfully, and this is the device to which we need to talk in order to send the packets through the serial port to the APC power distribution unit. And something what you need to keep in mind is that I did not have to go and search for any kind of drivers and such. No, I just simply plugged in the USB to serial cable, and since this chipset is already, it's fully supported by the Linux kernel, it works out of the box and there is no need to mess around with any of that stuff, which I can tell you, it really makes your life a lot easier. So anyway, in order to then get back to your original shell with the root privilege, you just hit the Q key to quit, and now you are back to the original shell. Next then you're gonna need some sort of serial terminal emulator program to which you are then actually able to send packets to the PDU. And personally, I find that the GNU screen is probably the best for that. In some distributions, it is already installed. In some of them, not. So nevertheless, if you want to install it on a Debian-based distribution like Debian or Ubuntu, then you just issue the command of apt-get and then install in order to install the package, and the package name is screen. Or I'm not gonna do it because in my case it's already installed. Or if you have a Red Hat based OS, Linux OS of course, then you can just use the yellow dog updater, and you can then install again the same package name. And once you have then the GNU screen installed, then you should now have some way in order to communicate with the TTY USB 0. So then let us try to do that. And I can tell you that the default settings for GNU screen are made such that actually it works out of the box with most serial consoles. So if we type screen in order to execute the GNU screen, and then as I mentioned, we would like to talk to the dev because it's a device, and then it was the TTY for the teletype, so something what you can type to, and then it was the USB, and then it was the first device because it's the USB 0. So now if we hit the enter key, then it actually opens up a new window practically. And if we push the enter key in order to initialize communication with the power distribution unit, then as you see here, the power distribution unit is asking us for the username and for the password. So if you are at this stage already that you can communicate with the power distribution unit, it means that the serial connection works just fine. So you are then really ready to initialize the reset procedure. After you have established that you have a good working connection to this serial port of the power distribution unit, now is then the time to actually initialize the reset procedure. For that, take then some sharp point and then push it right here where there is written reset. So there is a small tactile button right below. So then insert it into the hole and push it down and keep it pressed down for 10 to 12 seconds. Then do not release it yet, because once you release it, you need to then shortly push it again, and then here this LED will then blink yellow, and that is the time when this is blinking yellow, when you should then frenetically push the enter key on your keyboard on the PC in order to then initialize the reset procedure through the serial port. So let us then do that. So I will then release this thing, and then shortly after push it again for about 1 second, release it, and then we can start the real reset procedure. Let's go. Okay, so I'm hitting the enter key as crazy, and at the beginning you will get no response because the microcontroller inside the unit is then being reset, but just go on hitting the enter key, no problem. And once you get any type of access, then like now, right away, put in APC and APC twice. And after you put in APC, just push the enter key. I actually made there a typo, as you see, but it still worked. So yeah, don't wait until the unit times out, because once the green LED comes back on, the password is no longer the default APC and the user is also not APC. So yeah, don't really wait, just type in the password and hope to get lucky. Because depending on the firmware version and depending on what type of device you are trying to reset the password on, you're gonna get different behavior. On other devices you get only 15 seconds. So yeah, that's why I went there a little bit trigger happy. But as you see, it still works. And now then you're in the command line interface, and practically you are then now communicating with the power distribution unit through the serial port. And now through this serial console, then you can reset the management password. And in order to do that, then push on your keyboard the number 3, because as you see here, this is then the option for the system. So then we select number 3, and then the user management is what we're gonna need. So then we're gonna type 1 and press enter. Oh yeah, I like this. So we have already here an administrator, and that is definitely the guy whom we would like to reset. So we're gonna select the option 1. And as you see, the current administrator and the user is then APC. But keep in mind, you should change this, or at least put in APC and APC again, because otherwise actually it will retain the old administrator user and the administrator password. So you need to go through the whole hassle again. So then I'm just gonna here type in, since it is asking for the new administrator username, I'm just gonna use APC, and the password for this new administrator user, I'm gonna also use APC. It just gonna write you stars back. But yeah, I mean, don't get fake impressions. The serial console is not really, yeah, very secure by nature, but I don't really want to go into that discussion now. So I'm just gonna type APC. Then it asks me to confirm the password again. So I'm just gonna type in APC again. And as you see that the password have been changed successfully for the administrator. By the way, I think I found also kind of a bit of vulnerability with this. So if you press twice enter, then you can get back to this main menu. And if you kill now your terminal, which at least in GNU screen you can do with the Ctrl A in order to send a command, and then you hit the K key for kill, then it will ask you, do you really want to kill this window? You say yes. And normally you would expect that if you try to log in again, it should ask you for at least the minimal password of APC and the username of APC. But I found that actually, as you see, you can right away log back in. And this is really, I'd say it's a little bit of vulnerability, because in order to then close this session, you actually have to hit the escape key. Then you have to hit the escape key again in order to get back to the main menu. And now, as you might see here, you have the option number 4. If you hit the option number 4, then it will log you out. And it's explicitly written that you are now in pass-through mode, whatever that is supposed to mean. So if you now hit your enter key again, as you see, now it is indeed asking you for the administrator username and password. So then let us try to use the APC and APC, what we have set up. And luckily everything is working just fine. So then, yeah, the password reset was successful. From this stage on, then you can then go into the menu, and you can select the submenus like the network. You can then set up a IP address, and from that stage on you are able to actually do the whole management remotely over a like a web browser. I mean, that will be the topic of a upcoming video, because it's this video is already getting really long even so. So now then we are finished with the reset procedure on Linux, and now it's then time to look for how do you do the same thing on the Windows. And first of all, as I said, the issue is that you're gonna need to get the driver going. If you have bought a relatively expensive USB to serial converter, then hopefully you had a CD, or at least you get a website where you can download the driver. I can tell you, for my cable, I actually had to hunt around on websites which were only available in Mandarin, so I just practically just blindly clicked on some download buttons, and finally I got one of the .exe files which does work on Windows XP. And after I have installed the driver, then then let us go through what you need to do to first of all check that the driver is then actually working properly. So you should go and right click on the My Computer icon on your desktop, and then go to the option Properties and click on that. Then you're gonna be greeted with this window here for the system properties. Then go and click on the hardware. Then you're gonna get all these options here. You just click on the device manager next. And once you open then the device manager, then you're gonna see your computer name and all kinds of hardware and so forth. Don't worry now about these question marks. These are not related to the serial port. So what you need to check is that what is happening with the communication and the line printer terminal ports. So right here, this one, then please click on this plus sign right there, which gonna then open a small drop down menu. So after clicking on this plus sign, then as you see now there is this USB serial converter is installed. At least we see that it does have some driver. We also see the chipset, so it's CH340. And also note, importantly, that this serial to USB cable is then mapped to the COM1 port right there. It is nicely telling you that, which is a really good information to have. Next, then double click on this USB serial communication port right here in order to look into the details of the driver and also of the settings. After double clicking on this thing, then you're gonna have this window popping up, and this is not really useful here, so we're gonna have to click on this tab for the driver. After you have checked that there is actually a driver loaded, also definitely you should check the port settings, because sometimes the serial port is not working because some of the default settings by the driver are just plain wrong. So in this case the default settings were right, because in order to reset the PDU we need to communicate with it with the standard 9600 baud per second using 8 data bits, no parity bit, 1 stop bit, and absolutely no hardware or software flow control. As I said again, since we didn't discuss yet the serial communications and what these parameters mean, I mean, just set them as you see them here accordingly if eventually your driver have set different values here. And then just click the OK in order to actually set these parameters. A serial terminal program under Windows I have downloaded then the Putty.exe and I have put it on my desktop. I like to use it because at least it is a free application. So then you just double click on the icon itself in order to start it up. After the Putty program is being then started, you're gonna get this smaller window, and as you see, it tries to connect to some sort of device through the SSH using port 22. For us, this is no good. So first of all, go here and click on this serial. After you have clicked here on this serial settings, then you're gonna get this window here, and then please check that actually you have the same communication port or COM1 port here, like what we had earlier in the driver section shown. Because if you select the wrong COM port, then you will obviously get no communication whatsoever. Also, please check whether these settings are right. So as I said, 9600 baud, 8 data bits, 1 stop bit, no parity bit. But hopla, as you see, the flow control here is a software flow control, which would completely mess up the packets going between the power distribution unit and the PC. So then click here and then change this to none, because that is the right setting. Otherwise you will have no proper communication with the PDU. So simply by clicking in here, then you just get this small drop down menu and select none. After you then have selected none and you are sure that all the other settings are right, then go back and click on the session option again. Then you just get back to the original screen, which normally gets displayed if you start the program. However, keep in mind that we want to use the serial console and not SSH. So then please then next click on this radio button here. Then check that the COM line is the right one, so it is COM1. Also the speed is 9600 baud, that's also fine. And once you have done all this, then click on the open button, and then this will open you now a terminal window through which you then you should be able to connect through the serial port here to your power distribution unit. If your driver is working and you are sure that the serial cable what you have made or you have bought from APC is working properly, then also using Putty and through this COM1 serial port, as you see, if you press the enter key a couple of times, then it's gonna ask you for your username and password. Once you have established that you do have connection working to the serial console using Putty, then now it is time that you should do the real reset procedure. The steps are the same because technically speaking you are just in a terminal and communicating with the serial console of the APC PDU, like what I did for the Linux portion of the tutorial. So please then go back to that portion of the video. I'm gonna put in the description below to which minute I'm doing the reset. At that stage then you should have your password reset and you should be up and running with your APC PDU. And then of course the next stage is that one should then set up the IP address and so forth and do the actual configuration either via the command line interface or through a web browser. And most probably this is what we're gonna look at in the next video in this series. So yeah, I mean, many thanks for watching.